What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Free Toaster News Pod. I'm your host, Carlos Caro, and I'm here with co-host Nick Madrid. And this week, we're going to talk about a smartphone producer that just launched a credit card. So on the surface, seems like a kind of a plain co-brand story. I actually think it's a story about who owns the default payment credential in a world where software and agents and AI are increasingly doing more of the buying. So Nick, can you break down that story, and then we'll leave a little time to chat about what we think it means for issuers?
Yeah, let's do it. So Samsung announced Samsung Galaxy Card, its first credit card in the US, issued by Barclays, running on Visa, and the applications opened July 22nd, right ahead of Samsung Galaxy's Unpacked event. There's a physical card, but the center of gravity is the Samsung wallet. You apply in the wallet, you service the account in the wallet, you redeem rewards in the wallet. You never really leave Samsung's ecosystem.
Can you walk through the rewards table? We published it in the newsletter, but I think folks that didn't see that, I think should understand how that looks.
Yeah, so there's no annual fee, 5% cash back on purchases made directly from Samsung, Samsung.com, the Shop app, retail stores, 3% on anything you buy using the card inside the Samsung wallet, no spending caps, 2% on streaming like Netflix, Spotify, Disney Plus, 1% on everything else, plus a $200 bonus after $2,000 of spend in the first 90 days. APR runs through roughly 23.5 to 32.25, depending on the applicant. And of course, no foreign transaction fees, which is pretty common.
I mean, it's sounding pretty good to me. I mean, so much so I got folks, industry insiders in the card business, commenting on the news saying they would apply and take the card themselves. So sounds so good so far, but how does it compare to the Apple Card?
Right. And the comparison, I think, and we think, flatters Samsung on paper. Apple pays 2% as its blanket Apple Pay rate, and 3% is reserved for Apple itself and a short list of partners. Samsung pays 3% on everything you tap in the wallet, a full point higher on general spend. Though it's worth remembering that the Apple Card's first chapter didn't end that cleanly, right? We covered it back in January when Chase took the portfolio off of Goldman at a reported discount north of $1 billion. Discounts like that are pretty uncommon for a major co-brand program like this.
So there was like a technical nuance we hit on in the newsletter. I think something around the way Samsung and Barclays structured servicing. Can you hit on that a little bit, Nick?
Yeah, this was interesting, right? So Barclays extended its servicing APIs directly into Samsung's operating system. That's their first digital wallet native card. And per their head of US cards and partnerships, the point is that the cardholder never has to bounce out to a bank app or a bank website. The whole servicing experience lives with that inside Samsung. Less friction, fewer logins, and redemption happens right at point of purchase. Statement credits start at the dollar inside the wallet versus $25 through the Barclays portal.
Yeah, so a part of me is like, whoa, that's a lot of work. Like, why on earth would they do something like that? And then another part of me is like, well, duh, Apple's so obsessed with user experience and the card's so cleanly integrated into the ecosystem that I think Samsung maybe had that as an example to follow. So pretty clear to me, Samsung had a heavy hand in designing this. This doesn't feel like a bank product with like a co-brand distribution partner the way many other co-brands look, like the United card, the Marriott card, etc. This feels more like a technology product with like a bank partner on the back end. So I think that's the news, Nick. Do you want to cut over on what we think this means for issuers?
Yeah, but before we do that, a quick thanks to this week's sponsor, Spinwheel. If you're building anything that depends on knowing a customer's real current debt picture, whether it's balances, payoff, payment status, Spinwheel gives you that data in a way that actually plugs into a modern product. If that's on your roadmap, they're worth a conversation. Link in the show notes. Big supporter of the toaster. Thanks, Spinwheel.
Cool. So like on what this means, I think maybe we start with this 3%, 3% uncapped, all categories, anything you can purchase with the phone. So we know interchange isn't going to cover that. So the question is who's paying for this? Doesn't fit. It doesn't feel like this sits on Barclays liability. I don't know, Nick. What do you think? Who funds the gap?
Yeah, it doesn't feel that way either. Right? And neither company has said who funds the gap. So this is inference, not reporting, to be very clear. But our read is that Samsung is writing the check, or at least most of it, right? And to us, the tell is where the richest rate points are. So Apple pays its top rated Apple. Samsung pays the top rated Samsung, 2 points richer. The top of the earn table always aims back to the house in our mind. So
Yeah, yeah, and then once you start to see the subsidy, I think I think the strategy starts to become clearer. So the physical card works anywhere, 1%. So that feels normal. 3% only pays when the card sits in the Samsung wallet, and I think that's a nuance that's important. It has to sit in the Samsung wallet. So if I changed phones and it's now a Google wallet, still Android but not Samsung, some other phone, I no longer get the 3%. So I think you start to see the play there. Samsung's trying to keep you into their ecosystem.
yeah, and when you switch to an iPhone, your everyday earn drops from 3 to 1. So the card still works. There's a Barclays web portal to manage it, but the reason you got it, evaporates. That's not a rewards program. That's a switching cost with the rewards program stapled to the front of it.
Yeah, no, and I think to be fair to Samsung, I think this feels rational to me. Roughly 6 in 10 U.S. smartphones sold today are iPhones. Samsung's number 2, but they have well under half of Apple's share. So every phone they sell is $1,000. Then you have years of ecosystem revenue. So against that, a point or two on interchange or rewards, like that's starting to feel like pretty reasonable insurance.
Yeah, and one thing I worry about is I've been trying to get you over to the iPhone ecosystem for a while, and you just
And
refuse
now I'm
that.
never leaving.
And now I have fully lost that argument.
And I do
This
have a
is
Samsung, so I think I'm stuck now forever.
this is unfortunately a tough day for me. But although this is the counter rate to that point that you earlier made, the analysts that we read on this are not convinced rewards actually move device loyalty. The point a couple of them made is that cards are basically a commodity, and the average household already carries 3 or 4 of them for different jobs. The Apple Card never became a mainstream challenger. It's a fine cashback card. That's the ceiling that most of these hit.
Yeah, no, I agree. What else do you think could be going on behind the scenes here in this
So I think
partnership?
there's a quieter prize at play here, right? And this is the part that I think our audience should sit with. Amazon showed everyone how this works years ago. A co-brand card doesn't just drive loyalty inside your store. It shows you every purchase your customer makes outside of it. That's a full spend graph on the person, not just the transaction that you already saw.
Yeah, so I think for a company deciding what to build, stock, a company like Amazon, that data is worth a lot on its own. Um, it looks like the card issuers are going to start fighting over these first and wallet type relationships in these big digital ecosystems.
Yeah, card issuers have spent decades fighting to be first in the physical wallet, the card you pull without even thinking about it. Our argument is that the fight moved, and some lenders haven't really clocked it yet.
Yeah, no. So I mean, there's a fight now to be won in digital wallets, and you can argue that's been happening in say like Amazon. I've seen it with issuers where I think Chase was a mover and they got in with the co-brand. But if you've ever had a Discover card, if you've ever had any of these cards with rotating categories, they'll often talk about Amazon 5% for a month or for a quarter. The idea is they want to lock in your product as the first choice so that when you purchase on Amazon, flows through the card. So this war has been going on in Amazon for at least a decade. But I think it's going to start migrating now. I think what's changing now is AI agents are going to start buying stuff. So you're going to start to send Claude or ChatGPT off and to do research and to buy stuff for you. Um, and I don't think they're going to deliberate over which of your 4 cards to use. It might just go with the default.
Yeah. And before anyone dismisses that this is a 2030 problem or we're going to have agents spin on our behalf, admittedly, it's early, but it's not hypothetical, right? The data we've been tracking, most of it from B of A Global Research, is about 31% of US AI users already use AI to find product links, which is one of the highest usage AI behaviors across every age cohort. Shopify is reporting AI referred shoppers converting at roughly 50% higher rates than organic search, with AI referred orders up 13 times year over year in Q1. We've also learned about NerdWallet has said, even though the numbers are low, the referral traffic they get from ChatGPT is significantly better than other as general, web traffic as well.
I've
So
heard that from a lot of leaders in publishing, that the traffic coming out of the AIs is just unbelievable from a conversion rate perspective. Nick, do you happen to know how many of those folks that are AI referred actually completed a purchase?
this data point tells us that it's still early, right? So only about 6% of consumers have actually completed a purchase through an LM. So discovery is real and moving fast. The bottom of the funnel is still nascent. Anyone telling you that agentic checkout is here today is probably selling something.
Yeah, no. So I mean, so it sounds like Barclays certainly is tuning into this. Barclays is interesting because they've historically been in the co-brand game. So unlike many issuers that have headline branded products like Amex with their Platinum, like Chase with the Sapphire, like Capital One now with the Venture, Barclays actually tends to run the other way. They like to partner. They have special deep competency in co-brands. I'm not surprised to see them early to the game here, given the history in co-brand. They're clearly positioning themselves here to take advantage before the volume actually shows up. No one has framed this publicly, but Chase already kind of holds the default slot in the Apple's ecosystem as kind of that co-brand provider. Barclays, I think, now holds it in Samsung's ecosystem. So two of the big kind of smartphone device ecosystems in the country, that payment credential, that pole position, I think, is now spoken for.
Which leads to the one piece of actual advice in this episode, right? And if you're an issuer trying to grow a co-brand business, the classic call list is retailers, 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 right? We think that list is incomplete now.
Yeah, no, I mean, so now you used to have Amazon, but they're kind of a unicorn. There's only one Amazon deal to win. I think credit card companies now have to start to take a close look at these technology companies. Not all of them, by the way, will be consumer facing. So we're talking about Samsung in this instance, which is consumer facing, but there's going to be a world of back-end AI platform businesses that a consumer never sees, but have distribution through payment through agentic networks. So I think there's going to be a battle there, ground there for credit card partnerships potentially, because these tech companies are going to have two things I think a retail partner structurally doesn't have. So one is they hand you distribution inside a product people touch every single day. So maybe there's retailers like Starbucks, which is going to be an exception. Maybe there's some dailiness to that engagement. Most retailers don't have that. And then can subsidize terms like this 3% uncapped feature we're seeing on the Samsung product that you couldn't ever offer on your own. It just never makes sense on an incremental basis. So I think Samsung and Barclays are giving us a really great illustration like what this play looks like.
All right, so make the case. What's the prediction? What are we calling formally now?
We're not normally in the business of making predictions. I feel a little uncomfortable, but we've already put it out there. So we're predicting there will be a Claude card and a ChatGPT card.
Why? Why is this the case?
So, I mean, I think those companies fit the profile we kind of just described: daily usage, deep customer context, a reason to lock users in. The answer, it wasn't another phone maker, it was the LLMs, like the scale. So Google search apps share of daily actives versus AI apps, 87% in January 2025. It's down to 72% in June. So traditional search it's getting eaten by AI, the LLMs. So ChatGPT, $260+ million of revenue in June alone, 441 million global mobile daily actives, and then Claude, 59 million users a month. Daily users are up more than 1,200% year over year.
Yeah, that number just blew me away. I encourage everyone to look at the actual article we published, because there's a graph there that shows the 441 million global mobile daily actives from ChatGPT. And what I found fascinating was two things. One is just the sheer gap and how far ChatGPT is relative to all the other players. Like, it's massive. And you and I were asking, like, why is that the case? And it's probably because they were just the first mover. But Claude is catching up very fast. I live in Claude now. I tend to move around, but like Claude is my choice right now. And it's clear, you can see with the growth numbers that Claude is catching up as well. Anyways, so all right, and your argument is that the daily habit plus a payment credential is exactly the position that Samsung just monetized, right?
Yeah, no, I think that's right. And a comment, I guess maybe another way to answer why the ChatGPT gap. First mover, I think, is viable. Maybe Sam Altman's just like a personal branding genius, Nick. I don't know. Just putting that out there. Maybe that's part of the story. Um, anyway, so yeah, no, I think the incentive here is stronger for the LLMs. So Samsung wants to the data, like your purchase data. I think primarily so they can sell you more Samsung product. An LLM wants it because it actually makes the core product better. So there's this like data product flywheel that I don't necessarily see with Samsung. Maybe it's there, but it's not as obvious to me. Um, these companies like Claude, like ChatGPT, they're monetizing intelligence, and the more context they hold about you, the better their offer, their intelligence gets. So that compounding, that flywheel, I think is a big part of their business. Um, and they have a gap today on what you're doing offline. At least that's my impression. I don't think they have a window into that, and a physical card starts to close that window.
Can you give us like a concrete version? Because I think this is where it ultimately lands and how we call kind of wrap our head
Yeah,
around.
so maybe a couple to think about. So let's say you have a savings goal. You've told your assistant, let's say it's Claude, you're saving for a house, and it happens to know all your spend, and it gives you some tough love. It's like, look, you're saving for a house. Did you know you spent $300 at Starbucks last month? Would you like me to block that retailer for a little while? It sounds like you maybe have some impulse control stuff. Like, I can actually just shut that down if that's a problem, because you're telling me this is important and you're obviously doing something that's not in your best interest. So that's a scenario. Um, like a business travel scenario might be, I'm looking for rental cars for a trip. Um, Claude, I'm going to Charlotte. What do you think I should do? It gives you some option, and it's like, hey, by the way, Nick, if you go with Avis and you use the card you already have on file with me, can get you an extra 20%. And I can do that because Avis is running a promotion, it's plugged in, yada yada yada. Maybe you don't even care about the why. But all of a sudden, oh, okay. Now Claude can solve my problem and actually give me a benefit because I'm in the card ecosystem. So those are two to come to mind.
Yeah, and I think one of the lines that we liked is like it's not an ad, it's an outcome. And no bank app has really gotten close to that idea. And just playing it forward, if take a Claude card and if it's able to give us access to a model that otherwise we wouldn't have had, like that would be incredibly interesting, at least to me. For example, cashback is a commodity, but model access isn't. If the perk on a Claude card or higher usage limits or access to an even better model. Fable is phenomenal for what it's worth, that we're seeing. And naturally, these models are going to get better and better over time. There's a loyalty currency that no incumbent issuer can mint. Like, you can't out cash back somebody who's paying you in something you actually can't buy elsewhere. So I think they have a really unique position, these LLM companies.
Yeah, no, it's a really good point, and I wonder. Just riffing here for a second, like part of what make like the Amex cards, like these statusy type products, is like they can unlock experiences, lounges, et cetera, that you actually can't buy with cash. I wonder if there's like a status access play with like LLMs and intelligence that we haven't thought of yet, but like they're obviously going to be well positioned to do stuff like that with a card. Um, so one thing we haven't talked about, Nick, I think we should mention. We did hit it in the newsletter, but OpenAI just seated Nubank founder David Velez on its board on Tuesday. We could only speculate as to why, but I don't think an OpenAI is going to add the person who would built one of the largest consumer credit franchises in the world because they're just curious about fintech.
Yeah, and if we were to think about this on the other side, right? Like what would be concerns here? It's like the obvious objection to this is privacy. Do customers actually want their AI to see every single transaction? You and I have talked about this before, but what's your take on this?
Yeah, I mean, my view is convenience and practicality always wins. Like I remember the early days of the internet, believe it or not, people were debating whether or not they should share their credit card number on, like, to buy whatever, a toy for their kid, a DVD, it doesn't matter. There was a fear around, oh my God, how could I possibly enter my credit card number into this site? What are they going to do? And then if you stop to think about it, how different is it really from swiping at a merchant or a retailer? They're going to have, like, the information's out there anyway. So I think people ultimately get comfortable with the stuff. Um, but I think you're right. I think we do need to flag it as an assumption that is going to be tested. And what we don't know is whether Claude or GPT or any of the brands that we currently use synonymously with AI are going to be the ones that win the personal finance use case. I think there might be something unique about money, personal finances, that maybe it's more private, maybe it's not commingled with my other stuff. Maybe it's a separate brand, a separate company, a financial first brand that ends up winning that audience. So I think I'm personally very open-minded on what that. If I had another prediction, it might be that there's going to be a big other LLM that emerges that's specifically personal finance and owns that domain. But I mean, these are kind of one of the things we'll talk about in the summit that's coming up in San Francisco.
All right, so let me build the base case for the other side, because I think the case against it is stronger than it looks. In the counter argument is Plaid. We wrote back in May about ChatGPT's Plaid integration turning into a distribution channel for personal finance. And if a consumer permissions their account, the LLMs gets the spending intelligence without having to worry about any kind of plastic, right? So there's no charter, there's no credit risk, there's no collections, no regulatory surface area. So why even issue a card at all?
Yeah, no, I think it's a really fair question. In fact, when you think about the Plaid integration into ChatGPT, it's even richer data. So I get not just the co-brand card with Claude or the LLM or Samsung, in this case that we've been talking about today. I could potentially get all the cards. I can get checking. I could get brokerage. I could get insurance. I mean, I could get pretty much everything through Plaid. Two problems in my view. From a data perspective, that's better, but it's high friction. I have to give usernames and passwords now to an AI. An AI I know has the intelligence to, like, do God knows what with my usernames and passwords. So, like, that's scary. That's scary. Like, that's, to me, well different than just the knowledge that my LLM sees what I'm spending on one specific card. I've now exposed all my finances, all my passwords. Like, that has a different fear factor for me. The other side of the coin, back to why these LLMs, and back to our prediction, why will they issue a credit card? It's just easy, no friction. They mail me a plastic. I don't have to do anything. I don't have to integrate data. It just sees what I'm up to on that card. And then as I'm starting to use the LLM more, I'm noticing, wow, when I'm asking personal finance questions, it's giving me better answers because it kind of knows what's up on my card. It tells me, hey, maybe it even knows I haven't watched Netflix for 6 months. And it taps me and it says, hey, I know you haven't asked about this, but you haven't watched this for 6 months. You're paying $15 a month. Should I just cancel this for you? Yes, done. So, like, I think it's friction ultimately, like why these co-brand products may ultimately win.
And thinking about Claude card or the ChatGPT card. One footnote we genuinely can't answer is, does a card like that launch on Visa or MasterCard or on stablecoin rails, right? Programmable money is arguably the most natural fit for agentic commerce, smart contracts, near instant settlement. And we can't help but think that that could be an option. It could be a go-to-market option, but I don't know. What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm way out of my lane on crypto, so I can only tell you based on what I've learned in like the tech media and the mainstream media. But like to me, this is going to be on traditional rails, early days, Visa, Mastercard, keep it easy for people to adopt. But then as you start thinking smart contracts, agentic, automated commerce, I have to think there's probably a strong case for crypto rails making this a better network for this sort of thing. So my gut is this moves over to the blockchains over time, but probably starts with the traditional networks for now.
Cool. All right, I think it's time. We'll close it out. So you know, the Galaxy card is a built retention product with a subsidized rewards table. And the more interesting question underneath this is, who holds the default credential when an agent does the swiping? If you disagree with us on this LLM card prediction, or if you agree, either way, we really want to hear from you. Did you like this? Did you not? Please reply to the newsletter, send us an email. We would love to hear from you.
Yep, and this is exactly the sort of stuff we're going to be discussing at our summit on September 23rd. So it's called the Affiliate Marketing Summit for Lenders and Publishers. We're hosting it in San Francisco at the Exploratorium. We're sponsored by Experian, Engine by Gen, and Prism Data. Thank you all for making this day possible. We have publishers and lenders now signing up every week. Day 2, the day out in Sonoma, where it's a little bit more relationship building, limited to 50 people. We're almost sold out there. Details for the event, you can find us at events.thefreetoaster.com.
Yeah, the full breakdown of the Galaxy card, the numbers we cited, the graphs we cited, the whole prediction is in this week's newsletter at thefreetoaster.com.
Now we get to see how our prediction ages, Nick. So we'll come back to this 6 months, 12 months, and we'll have to hold ourselves accountable. So off we go. But thank you all for listening, and we'll catch you next week.
Thanks, Claude.